Good evening, everyone. We're ready to get started with our next seminar, but just before we start that, we're going to turn a few minutes over to Bob Wick for a presentation.
So, welcome everybody. I just want to take up a couple of minutes. I wanted to update people on what's going on with the awards this year. As you remember, last year we did the small model kit for everybody. We've expanded upon that a bit this year. It is actually a complete model kit at this point. No, it's all done on printing and with Gatorboard. Anyway, so this will be on display downstairs in the contest hall. You can take a look at it. There's a copy of the instruction sheet, the various pieces. There are also the basic instructions, and then we have the advanced building tips, which are regulated for kits. These are the additional components you'll need. It tells you what to do with them and how to improve the build on the kit itself. The basic awards this time are similar in appearance to what you had last time. The 4th through 3rd place is silver on silver. Best of class has a gold panel up in the top corner. The master awards are a larger size, silver and gold. I thought about just putting the instruction sheet in the Gerald Wingrove Scratch Building Award, but decided to put everything in there anyway. And then the best of show, which now has 2 different colors of gold on it, same size as last year. There's also going to be a little demonstration piece down there with that. This actually shows what those various steps will do to the Gatorboard in terms of improving your build. Anyway, I just wanted to update you on that. Thank you again for being here, and turn it over to Mark.
Hello, my friends. I'm going to sit in the audience today because I've got to operate this doggone PowerPoint. We're here to tell you about the newest developments and the programs and policies of the... I'm going to kill this phone. Turn it off. Anyway, technology and I are not close friends. So, as many of you know. So, we're here to talk about the museum. Please go take the tour tomorrow. The sign-up sheets are down by the registration desk. The tours are free if you've registered, so please go out and see the museum. We're going to walk through a bunch of subjects here to talk about what we've been doing. So let's start, if I can operate this, to tell you how we've reorganized the museum. The museum was hit pretty hard with the economic downturn. About 4.5 years ago, we expanded into an adjacent space, which we laboriously remodeled and repainted and cleaned the floor and so forth. The problem with that is that the rent doubled and our donation base virtually disappeared. And in fact, it disappeared over a course of about 6 months before the last GSL. And that meant that 3 or 4 people had to cover the extra $500 or so rent per month. And it became financially untenable to continue to keep both facilities open. So about a month after the last GSL, I got some neighborhood young men together with me, and we evacuated the second space and moved everything back into the first space, and spent the last 1.5 years reorganizing the original space so that it presents all the materials. And I think we've done a pretty good job, but when you go tomorrow, you'll be able to have your own opinion about that. In the back room, we have a series of display cabinets which were all rescued from a defunct jewelry store. This is the first one, and this is the Auto World display. We have an enormous collection of vintage Auto World artifacts, kits, trophies, display bases, printed items, the chrome tape they had, masking tape, pinstriping tape. It's quite remarkable, really. Then we're going to go, that's the one thing we've done. In the main room, we have a series of cabinets that come out from the wall, which are each divided into subject matter interests. This is the street rod cabinet, and you probably go out there more, you can recognize many of them. And then you see on the wall next to it, we have a display of the original Revell parts packs. Here's another view of that. We have managed, oh, this is the upholstery kits by, yeah, these are the upholstery kits in the next bay over. Another display case, these are the customs. Here is the Clone the Past cabinet, which we are soon going to evacuate for a reason that you all discover here a little later tonight. The Clone the Past program is an effort to replicate, when we can't acquire and restore, the most significant models in the history of our hobby. We have a list called the Hot 150, which from 1953 through 1968 are the most historically significant models built in the history of our hobby from the point of view of styling or technological advance or working features. Just many shuckless pieces are in there, for instance. Augie Ascano's stuff is in there. Jim Keeler's models, some of Jim Keeler's models are in there. And we have all of them. These are some of the models that have been restored. You can see there's a shuckless model on the top right, the Shamrock. Next to it is the car model magazine Crusader. Do you remember the original 40 Ford's two-door sedan? That was restored there. Next to it is a replica of a Keeler model, and that was from 1962 car. Oh my goodness, I don't remember the magazine. Down below it is the Dixie Bee, the restoration of the Dixie Bee. Looks like the top has come down in this picture. Next to it is Bob Paith model, which is the X100, which was in model car science, I believe, in 1964. The next thing down is this is a Tim Pentecost restoration, or rather clone. Tim, what do we call this model? This Chop Mercury? It's the Chop Mercury you did years ago. The Chop Blue Mercury you did. Oh, was that Rick's model? Okay, I apologize. And I can't see anyway, Jim Keeler's, I can't see the rest of them clearly. Down at the bottom are the two Dodge Fever models. Dodge Fever's 1 and 2. These are the original models, which were mostly just cleaned up. And so this cabinet, we're going to use it for other purposes because we have some larger scale cloning models, which we'll move to the next cabinet. Down on this end, as we continue down this eastern wall, we have competition cars, drag cars, land speed record, SCCA type vehicles, models gathered from around the United States and Canada. Now here are the replica stock models, including a significant collection of a builder by the name of Olaf Wall. Who knows who that was? He was a German builder whose work was covered in some Ford specialty magazines in the early 80s. And when he died, his widow contacted us. I don't know how she found us from what was then West Germany before the wall collapsed. And she contacted us and asked if we wanted his surviving collection. So we've got his vintage Ford conversion collection, plus other models. The Marlin on the fifth shelf down is from Dennis Doty. It's the first model ever to feature in a construction article bare metal foil, and we have other such models that go down there. You'll notice on the wall over here, we have some other parts kits. We're still incomplete. We've got some really odd stuff there we have found. Some complete kits, I don't remember the name of them, but they were on a rack. You could go buy them off a rack and get a complete kit. They were a crude clone of the 1960 AMT SMP models. They were just terrible. On the far side, we have the original AMT parts packs. Going backwards, aren't I? Here is the famed Oakland Roadster Show diorama. This was done about 20 years ago. Ken Hamilton built it. He and I and Bob Wick and a couple of other people collaborated to, Bob Barnett, gosh, I forgot his name, I'm sorry, collaborated to put this diorama together. Ken built it from drawings that he interpolated from vintage articles in Carcraft and Rod and Custom magazine. The original building was torn down in the late 60s, so we had no ability to go measure it or to take a tape measure or anything to it. So he interpolated the space. And the wood, of course, is the ceiling. All the lights come on. The show lights come on. There are little color wheels that light up and turn. And all of the structure, the apparent structure, is made from Plastruct. And by count, Ken, with a hypodermic needle, simulated 11,214 rivets. And you can see just every one of them if you want to go look at it. There's a control panel. You lift the cover up there, and you can run all the lights and so forth. We also then published lists to various groups of modelers to build the replica custom cars in there, which this is supposed to be a replica of roughly 1964 Oakland Roadster Show, but is sort of there. Dale Angel built the 9-foot scale, 9-foot trophy there, and photo etched all the names through 1964. They appear in relief cut in that you can see Bob Burnett's Dream Truck there, and some U-Haul aerial work is in there, and from all around the country, including 2 models from Australia. Here is another historic piece we have. This is Augie Hiscano's Blue Roadster that shared the top award in Revell Pactor number 2. When he died a few years ago, Carol Hiscano, his wife, gave this to the museum, and we have this now on permanent display. It is in this bubble that he created for it sometime, he could recall, in the late 70s. It is a magnificent piece of sophisticated work, a lot of machine parts on it. The wheels, when it was not cinched down, would come off. You could see the Bendix brake shoes. It was extraordinary. Nickel-plated brass. The body work is flawless even to this day. We have, several years ago, a guy by the name of John Eslow contacted me, and he was the winner of a major contest that was covered, I think it was the Model Ram, a model car contest, which ran coincidentally at about the same time as a Revell Pactor 1 and Revell Pactor 2 contest. And he built this model, which was a chopped custom Mercury. He opened the doors and trunk and everything else, and hollowed out an old TV set his father acquired from someplace, and lit it up. It has something like 43 light bulbs in it. And it is an extraordinary piece of work. This model is in its original condition. He contacted me about 3 months before he died of an unexpected brain tumor. His family, his nephew, and some other members of his family drove this across the country along with his complete collection of built models and a lot of memorabilia about this model. There's the back of it. These were the days before computer circuits and transistors and all, well, there were transistors then, but not in common use. This is 1964, remember. His father was an electrical engineer, and we have all the original drawn circuits on the legal pad. They designed this system, and it still works. We don't operate it very often for obvious reasons, but that's the back of this TV. So you have to get around the back to look at it, and I urge you not to do that when you go out to the museum, but that's the back of it. When it debuted here 4 years ago, it was sitting right here in the same room, and his nephew lit it up. And there are a series of switches down the side, about 14 switches down the side, which activate each of the several lighting systems in the car. Back in the back room again, there's Phil Gladstone hanging forth. You see on the far wall there, that's our quarter-scale Revell Chevy engine kit from 1958. That was presented to the museum last time. That engine was made on commission from General Motors to Revell. General Motors paid Revell in 1958 $50,000 in 1958 dollars to create a quarter-scale injection-molded kit of a Chevy small block 283. They shipped a fresh 283 two-barrel motor out there, which Revell then promptly took to a machine shop and had sliced into quarter-inch slices. On the bandsaw, they just cut the sucker up, and they turned it to their engineers, and they made injection molds of it. They ran a set, didn't turn out quite well. You saw from John Grazula's seminar today, they didn't have all the runners cut, so I went back and cut some new runners. And they put this display together in the back. That aluminum cabinet folds in the middle. They took that back east and made presentation with that item to General Motors, and General Motors by that point, Ed Cole said, we don't want to do the project anymore. We are not going to fund this further. We instruct you to destroy the molds, the beryllium dyes. So dejectedly, they went back to California, and they did in fact, Keeler tells me, they did in fact cut up the beryllium dyes, but not before they ran 6 sets of this. 6 sets. We have all that remain. A couple of fellows in Denver 3.5 years ago found an advertisement in Craigslist for rare Chevy quarter-scale engine kits, $1,000. And so he called me up and said, gosh, I don't remember his name, John Lunger, and the other fellow, I can't remember his name. He called me up and he said, does the museum want this? And I knew what it was when I heard it. And of course, I hyperventilated to the point I collapsed and had to be resuscitated. And I said, sure. So they went and bought it, and they paid $1,000 for it. That included this kit with this presentation board, which needed to be restored parts had fallen off and so forth. So we inventoried all the parts. George Layton, a local member of our club and one-time GSL Best of Show winner, assembled one of the engines completely. We have a complete assembled engine, and then we have a partial engine. And for the best of our research, the museum now has all that remained of that original run. The other kits, Keeler tells me, were probably destroyed. So we have this set, we have a completed engine and bits and pieces of one on an engine stand, and you can see those when you go to the museum. There's another shot of it front on. Behind these parts, there is a beautiful drawing, some hand-done engineering drawings on sepia. And they're glued on the back, and then with drawings of the parts. This thing has wrist pins and oil rings. It is a complete 283 Chevy. Yeah, and that didn't fall through, and then those parts kind of morphed around, and we ended up with them. Here are the two engines. The one in the background, the one again assembled and cleaned by George Layton, is a complete engine with all the bits and pieces. The one in the foreground had faded in color, that we have not painted that gold. That's just the way it came to us, and it is obviously incomplete. Now, Norm Weber, Replicas and Miniatures, is casting this engine. We have lent him the parts, and he will have a complete engine kit at some point, I don't know when. And it will probably be quite expensive because there's a heck of a lot of resin in it. So that will be available. Back out in the main room, and a part of our history, we have the surviving Dave Shuckles models, which our friends in the Town of Newburgh Club restored for us many years ago. I got a call from Oscar Kobaleski. Guys, how long ago was that? 15, 16 years ago? Got a call from Kobaleski one day who said that Dave died in 1968. He had muscular dystrophy and was severely crippled. Oscar told me that Dave's father, who was on his deathbed, literally, wanted someone, he called Oscar, who was his good friend, wanted somebody to come and get his son, Dave Shuckles' models, because upon his death, the elder Shuckles knew the house would be destroyed. These models sat down in a crawl space underneath the floorboards. And so I go crazy. I didn't know anyone back there at that point. The Tri-State guys, I was just getting acquainted with them. But I called Norm Weber up, who lived some 5 hours away. Norm Weber got in his big Buick station wagon, I think it was, or big Chevy station wagon, drove all night down to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and met with Elder Shuckles, who was in very serious medical condition at that point, and led Norm down the basement. Norm acquired all these models, lovingly put them in a box and packed them off and took them back to his home. At that point, Norm, the next day, Norm made it's like a 16 or 17-hour round trip. Norm called me the next day and said, these are not in very good condition. We need to clean them up. We need to restore them. And so the models were mostly restored by the Town of Newburgh guys. I restored one. Cody Grainland restored another. And we have all that we think. We have what we think is a complete collection of Shuckles' models based on the articles he did for Car Model Magazine back in the day. Would someone bring me a glass of water, please? So we have that on, and they are remarkable pieces. Remember, this guy was crippled like this. He couldn't sit in a chair. He built models laying on his stomach, his body propped up with pillows that his father put under his torso, and he would slip. He would slip X-Acto blades through his hands like this to cut parts. And that's how he built, that's how he painted. He did such things. Oh, thank you very much. He did such things as working lights, folding convertible tops in the 1949 Ford, and we have all these models up there. It is just a remarkable collection. Thank you. Yeah, boy, I'm telling you. That may help. One of the interesting things we found is that a model that came with this collection, it was a 40 Ford pickup truck. Everyone thought that it was a Shuckles model. And when we looked at it carefully, it did not match the pictures of Dave's. He did a 40 Ford pickup based on the AMT 3940 sedan kit. But it didn't match. What matched was that it was built by a guy by the name of Smitty, Robert Smith, over at Auto World. They used to call him Smitty. They did some instruction sheets. It's Smitty's car, and up to that point, historically, everyone thought it was Dave's, but it wasn't. So we moved it out of Dave's cabinet. It's still a great piece. It's just not a Shuckles piece. Below that, we have, of course, the Town of Newburgh's Chevelle project, which was in Scale Auto a number of years ago. It's a great project, guys. And the build quality is stunning, and they lent us all the magazines and the coverage from magazines in Sweden and everything else. It's a great exhibit. You need to look at it. Below that, we have models from other contests around the United States. The dune buggy, the lime gold dune buggy in front, was the first place winner in a dune buggy contest in Car Model magazine in about 1968. I don't recall the issue. Yeah, that one there. And down at the bottom, we have the famed Mike Carroll's models he did. They were the atomic waste models, the nuclear waste, the post-apocalyptic United States cars. He did 4 of them, and they're all just bizarre as can be. But we have them all, and they're in great shape. So I'm going to turn the time now to Phil Gladstone to discuss another project of ours, which is Scan the Past.
As you know, nothing lasts forever except maybe Mark's memory.
Not so much these days.
Yeah, maybe not so much. So we have a program to save the past. Of course, we have the museum with all these models. But we also have a program called Scan the Past. And we've started with, well, I try not to handle the magazines any more than we have to because they are fragile. They're done on a here's one that's not in very good condition. They're done on an acid paper because they did them as cheap as possible back in the day. This is 1963, April 1963. And it's deteriorating, and probably, fortunately, here in Salt Lake, we don't have much humidity, so that helps a lot. It's a lot drier climate. But they still are deteriorating. We don't handle these any more than it's absolutely possible. And that's why it's in this plastic sleeve. And what we do is we scan these onto a computer. Let me just a second here. Okay. Here's one, September 63. And this one has already been scanned. Actually, the one I showed you has also been scanned. And we scan them onto a CD, or a DVD, I'm sorry. And then this is one way we have to keep these and people to be able to do research of, past magazines without having to touch the magazines. And we have this program. Several people have been involved to do the scanning. It isn't very hard. If you have a good scanner and a computer and the desire to do this scanning, you could see Mark after the seminar, and he can, if you're interested, he can sign you up, and we can send you magazines to scan in, and then you send them back to us. Some of the things that we are scanning are not just the magazines, but these are from Auto World. This is from March and April 1963, and some of you may remember these. And they're newsletters from Auto World. As you can see, they're kind of they're deteriorated a little bit. And we've got almost a complete collection of magazines, and we continue to look for more. There's some of these are one-off, meaning these were done once, and that's it. And these have been scanned. So most of these small ones like this have already been scanned. This one, and Mark Brown told me not to handle any more than possible. This has the Astrodan in it. You recognize that? Okay. And I'm handling it more than I should, but that's okay. We plan eventually to get all this on the computer so that you can access it. We're not that far yet. We still have many magazines to.
Everyone who is willing to scan, we have Mark Benton's developed a scanning protocol. Each one of these pages is scanned as a PDF, about 360 DPI. So we have a really good image of it. And so if you have the interest and the time, it's just going to take manpower to do it. So I'm going to pass this around. Also, we'll pass this back around in a few minutes when we talk about the Phone and Pass program. But please sign up. What the museum needs most at this point is manpower, because there's so much to do, and there are only 4 or 5 of us in Salt Lake to do it. And that just is a grossly insufficient number of people. So I'll pass this around later. Go ahead.
There's a protocol we have to scan these. We want the protocol followed because then every disc is the same. It usually takes 2 discs to do a complete magazine. And we have a protocol of how to scan them. We scan them at 300 DPI and on true color. And then there's a few settings we want you to put your computer at when you, or the scanner at when you scan. And then we have a protocol for how the files are put into, are named, I should say, because each page has to be done, cover, front cover, back cover, inside, every advertisement, everything in that magazine needs to be scanned because there's important stuff on every bit of it.
We have almost,
Why don't you use the microphone?
technologically challenged. We have about 3,700 magazines that deal in some way or another with model cars. Some of them going back to the 30s, scale modeler and so forth. We've got a lot of magazines. We've triaged them. The magazines done that Phil said on the very inexpensive acid-based paper in the early 60s by Argus Publishers. If you know anything about Argus Publishers, this was a money laundering operation for them to cover their illegal publications in Southern California. We'll not go further on that. But they published it. They were, well, long story. I don't want to get sued. But they published this on, but there are no good lawyers.
I know a bad
they
lawyer.
published them on the least expensive paper they could, and those magazines are now starting to crumble, even the very advantageous conditions around here. And so we have selected those first. The original car model magazines were selected first, along with some really rare one-off magazines that Phil has shown you. Now we're moving into some of the later ones and going back even further in time to smaller titles, model car and track and so forth, and we need to have those scanned. Ultimately, we want to have all these magazines on the new, what will be the new museum website with the searchable database. And if you're a member of the museum, you'll be able to log on and look at any one of these magazines, any one of the pages, and download. So, but that is going to be an enormous effort, and most of it will just require a lot of work. So,
This is a list of everything that's been scanned. When we get it back, well, when we send it out, we record who it was sent to, when it was sent, and then when we receive it back. Now, the museum, if you need to or would desire, will reimburse for the discs and the mailing. Or if you'd like to donate that charge, we appreciate that also. Not at this time. That's why we'd like to put them on the internet so they're available for free. Yeah.
thanks, Phil. Yep. It's really on now. It was only half on before. One of the major programs we have in the museum is something called Clone the Past. I touched on this earlier. We've identified the 150 most historically significant models in the first 18 or so years of our hobby. And we've attempted to find these models where we could. In many cases, in fact, in most cases, they're simply not available, or we can't find the builder. And so we have decided to clone them. And this program extends. One of the first ones we did, and Lon, I didn't plan this. One of the models we started off on this list was to scan Lon Stern's Astrodan. We have it up here. We'll show it in a minute. So who shows up? Oh, God bless you. So who shows up on Thursday of this week? This fellow in the top hat shows up, walks over to me and said, "Are you Mark?" And I said, "I am." And he said, "I'm Lon Stern." I just about fell off my chair. Those around me can testify to that. Oh, I was having a cerebral event. And so I asked Lon, I said, stammering, as I do so often, I said, does the Astrodan survive? And he said, yes, it does. And he unveiled it. Lon, go up there and unveil these two and show the original Astrodan, which was first won a major award in the Winter National Show of 1963. He repainted it, redid it a bit. It struck a major paint award in Revell Pachter #2, and then went on to win the top awards in the 1964 car show. I don't remember which one. But that's the original Astrodan you see up there. And here's the clone we're doing. Get up closer. Judas Priest. When we decided to clone this model, we turned to Mike Good, a Southern California sculptor of some renown, and we were relying upon photographs like this out of vintage magazines. It turns out that this color, of course, is entirely false. We interpreted the color to be the dark green that it is, and again, my second shock yesterday was the fact that the model did in fact have a dark green paint job, because this is the way it appeared in Car Model magazine. Here's it as we displayed it a few years ago. Mike Good has had it since then. I'm going to finish it up. He has been working and finessing the undercarriage. Randy Durr, we call him Randy Durr's notable machining skills, and he turned the front and rear headlight and taillight bezels and the lenses, and we have those. And they are beautiful. One of the other models on our list is Harry Offinger's T-Bird. This showed up in several places in an era of all the gorp and some of the really weird models with, and you'll see a couple of them in a minute, of just models that are just throwing crap at things. This model was done by a guy named Harry Offinger who lived in the Northeast. Rick Wright started this model, and we now have it back in our possession, and we're going to try and finish this up. We need a qualified builder to finish this model. We've got the body. Gordon Clark has supplied, I think, all of the parts for it, and it needs to be finished. The next model we want to replicate is Carl Dunn's double-engine dragster from Revell Pachter Contest #2. Norm Weber has resin cast all the engine parts for us, some of which came from the old Monogram Sizzler kit. Those are Allison's. Yeah, the blocks are. He, yeah, that's right. Norm Weber has cast all the parts for this. We have the tires and wheels. We need a really skilled builder who likes drag vehicles, fantasy drag vehicles, to build this model for our Clone the Past program. Now, Tim Pentecost is one of the notable cloners we have in our program. He replicated Rich Morgan's winning dragster up on top. Let me tell you something about the dragster. That won Rich Morgan a Corvair in the second Revell Tester show. The engine sits up that way because someone at the contest dropped it. And they just dropped the engine in place and didn't tuck it back down. Well, fortunately, Tim, being the smarter than the judges at that show, replicated the model at the bottom and put the engine in its correct position. Well, more correct. No, it was. Rich Morgan contacted us a few years ago. He runs a big, heavy equipment moving company up in the Northeast. And he told me that the model no longer exists, but they dropped it and the engine flew across the floor and they pasted some parts back on it, threw it back in the chassis. So that's how that happened. Here are more photographs of Tim's work. And Tim's down to the point, Tim was replicating a couple of errors that were in the original model. Now here is the car model magazine Crusader. How many of you remember this from the very early days of car model magazine? Okay, the history of this model, and we think it was built by Smitty at Auto World. They did this, as the magazine article said, to crusade for better model car building. And so they chopped and channeled and did everything else and pulled the parts together. Well, it disappeared for a long time. Dennis Doty called me about 20 years ago. You may remember the Car Model magazine, when it closed up with Auto World, they moved it out to a company called Tonto Publishing in Arizona, New Mexico, I think Arizona. And they would start the magazine back up and ran it for 4 or 5 issues, and then it collapsed because they weren't doing a good job. But they picked up a lot of artifacts from Auto World, including this model, which had been broken into 3 parts and painted with a thick black latex house paint. I mean, it was just, ugh. And so Dennis Doty called me, and he got a hold of it somehow. I don't know how Dennis got it. He got the parts. I got a bag of parts and the model, and he said, "Mark, do you want the model for the museum?" And of course, I said no. And he shipped it up. I stripped the latex paint off it. And I mean, it was some places a 1/16 of an inch thick. Somebody take a brush to it, and then it dropped it or stepped on it, cracked it right down through the middle, fractured the roof. And so I decided to strip the first restoration we did in the museum. I just stripped the old paint off, repaired I could have built a new one in a fraction of the time it took to fix this darn thing. But the seats were still in good shape. I steam cleaned them, steamed the interior door panels so that they were curled up like this, and the steam cleaning relaxed them. And so after I painted it in candy red, I glued the door panels back on. I found most of the parts in the personal collection, the grill work and everything else. The engine and the chassis were in remarkable condition, and all I did was clean it with a Q-tip. But it had to be painted, and I put it back together, and you can see this tomorrow when you go out to the museum. Now here's another one we need built. This is the Goldenrod, based on Aurora's double deuce car. It was again one of those completely tasteless, just an awful piece of work, but historically significant because they did a whole feature article on it in the early days of Car Model magazine. Now here's one some of you may really remember. This won the top paint award in Revell Pactor #2. It was ostensibly a 60 Corvette that Tom Davidson threw about 4 pounds of putty at. And after he smoothed it, painted it chartreuse, and then got a salt shaker with thick metal flake, and he said just danced it over the wet surface, put another couple of coats of candy on it, and he said it had 43 coats of thick clear to smooth it out, sanding it every 15 or 20 coats. We need this model clone because, again, it's tasteless in the extreme, but it is historically significant. So if you want to do this, those of you who are into Butter Dish Awards, so. Now, what about this model? This is on the list. This model was subject of a feature article. All the lights, headlights, taillights, interior lights, turn lights, and all that stuff worked. You turned it over, and it was a morass of wires that just went helter-skelter all over the place. But again, it was one of those early examples of a cloned model, excuse me, of a model that ought to be cloned, not because it is beautiful, because Lord knows it isn't, but because it represents an era in time. I'm sorry? 34 Ford. And it's got, remember the old toothbrush containers when the older ones were young, they had toothbrush, you'd pull the little cap off? That's what the radiator grill is. It's just, and it's got all these parts from Revell parts packs, and it's got the Ulrich upholstery kits, the turquoise and white thick pearl vinyl. In real world, the vinyl would be an inch and a quarter thick. It's just bizarre. Yeah, and it's got auto roll tape all over it, and it's got a piece of plastic in the roof, and it's awful. But it is historically significant, and we need someone to clone it. Now, what about this? Who remembers Jack Herndon's missile? This is a really interesting piece, which, obviously had fog paint. Bob Paith attempted to do this and got about halfway done before he passed away and just was unable to finish it. I think it would be easier to start with a new model, but we need someone to clone this piece. Again, Gordon Clark has found all the bits and pieces. Gordon Clark, Gordon, are you here?
Right behind you, Mark. Right here.
Okay. Gordon Clark has a very large truck, like a semi-truck almost, and he has tens of thousands of parts in little bins organized, and he knows where they all are. So I called him up and I said, I sent him pictures. We need these wheels, we need this engine, we need this steering wheel. And 2 weeks later, here are the parts in the bag or in a box. Gordon supplies all our parts. Dale Horner, Dale, are you here? Oh. Dale Horner in the Model Car Company does all the museum plating and has donated a significant amount of that, as you'll discover a little later tonight. So we have all the resources. What we need is someone to do the labor.
So what was that car based on?
1929 Ford Roadster.
Now that you say it, I see it.
Sure you do, Dale. What are you on tonight? Now this is an interesting piece. Gosh, now I've got a mental block. What's his name? Doggone it. Jones. Last name of Jones. I'll think of it in a minute. He built this car. Chuck Jones. Thank you. God bless you. This model was built by Chuck Jones based on the 1962 Pontiac. This is currently being cloned by Alan Rabb back east. This won a major contest that ran parallel with the second Revell Packard contest. The major car shows would run their own model car series, contest series. This won a major award. As we detailed in the museum newsletter from about 5 or 6 years ago, the top prize in this contest, the guy that won, was that Ed Roth would build your car, your model in real scale. Well, they sent this out, and Ed Roth said, I will not do that for love or darn money. So Chuck Jones, who never got the car back, sued Revell. Revell brings out this, as you'll see in an old, look on the website for the old back issue of The Builder. Revell brings out this awful piece of crap pasted together custom show car, and it just looked like some show rod on bad steroids. It was just the worst thing I've ever seen on a trailer. And Chuck says not a chance. Continued with the lawsuit, and eventually Revell bought him a 427 Corvette Roadster as settlement of the suit. But the model disappeared. But a lot of the photographs survive from Chuck Jones' personal collection. So Alan Rabb now is working on this with Chuck, and they're going to have this done. Yeah, he did. Now, who knows what this is? Name it. Name it. Whose name is attached to it? Crop. Crop's Playboy. Now, what's it based on, guys? 57. When I called Gordon to do this, he almost didn't do it because it's so damned ugly. But we have all the parts. It's based on a 57 Thunderbird, and again, it was, you notice the matching front and rear tires and how the wheels fit so neatly into the tires. And the front grill work, and oh my gosh.
Lights in the front are plastic.
Oh, they're not even centered. But it was the feature of a 3-page article in the August 1963 issue, 1962 issue of Car Model magazine. So it needs to be done. I thought of doing it, but my wife forbade me, so it's got to go to someone else. Now, what about this piece? This came out of Revell Packard #1 contest. It's in that Models Championship magazine that Phil showed a few minutes ago. This was built by a guy by the name of Charles Gibbleterra, who later turned out to be a major participant in the General Motors Guild model design program. But he built this, and from what Jim told me, it was too sophisticated to be treated well at Revell Packard #1 and didn't win anything but a regional award. And in fact, it's a very sophisticated fiberglass cast sports custom. It is. It's a gorgeous piece, and we need someone to do this. Now, who knows what this is? You can read it sort of there. Now, who designed it? Who built it? No. It's a Dave Shuckless piece. Auto World in the early 62, 63 had a series of one-page descriptions that was an 8.5 by 11 sheet. Shut up. 1962, 63, Auto World had Shuckless and Smitty do a series of custom models. The build was recorded on a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, sometimes double-sided. This also showed up in Car Model magazine. It's a 36 Ford with a Revell parts pack, Dream Car front grille, and a bunch of other parts thrown together. It's kind of interesting, and it's one of the few cars from that Auto World series that shows up in our Clone the Past project. So that's basically where we are at this point. So we're going to now turn to Tim. Would you go up front, please? Tim is our most prolific cloner by a long shot, and he now has been replicating. Who remembers the Yance brothers, the drag builders? Well, I guess you do. You may recognize these models which showed up in back issues of Car Model magazine. Well, Tim, of course, researched them with Norm Weber's casting help, various bits and pieces. He followed these instructions to the T and built both of these dragsters. Cutting the rims, gluing the tires together, and all the rest. There's a picture. There's a finished model. And here's the other one. And these are faithful replications of the original Yance brothers. Tim, tell us what you did.
Okay, the orange one, the number 2, was basically followed with the building instructions in the magazine. So it was a piece of cake in that sense. That this is one of the, well, in fact, I think it's the only clone that I've had a build how to do it. Most of the clones that I've worked with or done in the past, sometimes it's just a picture, you know. But the body is all scratch built per the article, using the unobtainium Sizzler kits, which Norm Weber was able to, he has reproduced and sent me the parts that I needed. And I took it from there. Same with this one. This is based on the Sizzler kit also, but he did more of a trick rear end to this one, which I had a hard time wrapping my brain around how to make this come out. Long story short, part of this round part back here is a ping pong ball. I just cut a slice out of a ping pong ball and cut the opening for the chute pack, and it fit. What can I say, you know? But the rest of the body is scratch built based on body panels from the Sizzler dragster. The engine is all cast resin from Norm. Made the valve covers like we used to do back then for fin valve covers. You know, get your little saw and saw the top of the valve cover off, put a piece of plastic on it, and then cut in your grooves. And just, you know, tried to make things look like the pictures. Back then, we all did it. I did it, and they're all out of scale, but it has the double aught 90 brass jeweler nut and bolts and all that stuff that were real popular back then. Well, that was all that was available back then. And basically, you know, this one was, like I say, because of the body work here, I just, for whatever reason, I couldn't wrap my brain around it. But I think I did a pretty good job on catching that, in spite of my best efforts. And I would invite any of you people out here to please step up and sign up for the Cloning the Past program. You know, if I can do this, you guys are the talented ones. If I can do this, you guys can do it, and we sure need the help. You know, it's like Mark says, he says I've done 5, I think I've done 6, and, you know, I may have done 7. I don't really keep track of them. I just, you know, every now and again I'll pop one out. We'll have a discussion over it. And, in fact, I wanted to change out of doing this one and to another one that was been much easier, but he said, no way, Jose. So anyway, I jumped back on this, and like I said, this one really gave me a lot of problems. Just, I guess it picked up my bad vibes, you know. And I want to thank my wife, Paula, stand up, because she supported me through all of these clone, you know. Well, I do. I go in and ask her, I said, well, how does this look? Here's the picture. Am I getting close, you know? So, you know, she has helped me on these in that respect. So, again, Norm Weber, thank him very much for all of this, and everybody who's sent me pictures or, you know, heard of this rumor or that rumor on what was used for, you know, not just these, but all the clones I've done in the past, you know. And I'd really, you know, there's some talented builders here. A couple of you I've talked to in the past, you know, and I think you really have the talent. And it is enjoyable, you know, if some of you guys are, you know, wanting to be pro modelers or whatever, you know, expand beyond the hobby, this would look good on your resume. You know, I've got models in the National Model Car Museum. You know, that's not a bad point, you know, to have on your resume if you're trying to build professionally. So anyway, any questions?
Thank you, Tim, for your work. He has truly been terrific. Now, Tim, you know you've got to do a couple. You got to do a couple more now, Tim. Yeah.
That stopped in its tracks.
We want you to build. We want to build some more models. No. You've done enough. Here are another couple of interesting pieces. Look at Jerry Svitek's piece over here on the left. This won the most working parts award in Revell Packard #1. It had a 3-speed operating transmission, open gear set in the rear, operating lights, jam lights that came on when you opened the doors. It was based, I think, on a '62 Pontiac again. You look underneath it, it's crude. Of course, it hardly looks like a Ford 9-inch back there. But when you think about the work that this guy undertook, it is, again, one of the very significant pieces in the history of our hobby. Now, what about the piece over on the right side, Dwayne Gibson's Thunderbird? That's another piece that's on our list and ought to be replicated. And, of course, we have the Crop Playboy. Now, in the early 60s, Bill Newman was editor of Rod and Custom Magazine. First of all, Don, are you here? Yeah, I'm right behind you. Okay. Bill Newman built a Channel 32 Ford, and it was quite a famous hot rod. And subsequently, it was covered in an article by Don Emmons in the pages of Rod and Custom magazines, which is of course, an incredible. And here are the articles on the car and how Don built this, and it was a significant effort. You had to chop and channel and step the frame and do everything else that you can imagine. It was covered in 2 separate issues where Don exhaustively showed how this piece was done. Filing up doors, channeling the body, how to cut the windshield posts, how to reshape this, how to cut up the monogram interior panels, and all the rest. It was finally featured in the July '64 issue on the cover, finished. We would like to turn the time now to Paul Mendoza.
My name's Paul Mendoza. Some of you know me personally, others know me in the forums as Mr. 68 GTS. Been building models a while, and I got involved with a Clone the Past because I wanted to do the Deuce, thanks to Tim Pentecost back there. He's kind of ribbing me, going, hey, you need to do one. So y'all need to do one too, okay? I'm just saying. This was quite an undertaking. The article, while well written, was missing some information as far as, motor mounts and things like that, but it was pretty well done. It had 95% of the information there. Between Mark's information and then I actually ran across some photos in some magazines of the original actual car, it kind of helped. But without further ado, for the most part, it's pretty correct. I couldn't locate the original color. And actually, I didn't even really know what color Don painted it, so I kind of took a stab at it. Yeah, red. The original car was Cadillac color, but obviously you weren't going to find that back then when this model was built, so other than that, it still has a few minor details that need to be adjusted and finished up, but for the most part, there it is.
Let me give a special tribute to Dale Horner. I had the privilege of being asked by Paul to clean up, work over sand, polish, prime, and polish the various parts that needed to be chromed. I sent him off to Dale Horner, who has been great, who has graciously supported the museum in each and every of our projects in terms of doing vacuum metallizing. And I know from what Dale told me that he had a heck of a time with some of the parts on this, but he plated probably 30 or 40 parts on this car, on this model, so that it could replicate the original build that Don did. And Dale, I want to give our tribute to you for your great generosity for this. Let's give a hand to Dale. Dale he had trouble with plating one part, and I got a very candid email one day where he used language you probably couldn't use in polite company. And I was sorry that he had the trouble, but Dale persevered and fixed the problem and sent the parts out to Paul, and it's a great project, and I urge all of you to go look at it when we're through here. Ron Custom Models.
Custom Models. That one's mine.
Don's original model, to support what
It's in
Tim
the
said,
museum.
is down in the museum.
Right.
And Tim has cloned that Willis pickup that Don did.
You're not getting that one.
Paul, nice job.
That was a long time ago. It looks like it though, yeah. It's just a bright red, you know. And I don't know whether he wound up getting the paint for it because he built the car in New York before he came to out to get the editorship there. It was one of the early things coming from the East Coast that was pretty radical for hot rod stuff, you know,
Yeah.
clear back then.
One of the other features that the museum have, of course, touched upon by Phil Gladstone earlier, is an extensive library. Mark Brown, who has a strong interest in this, has organized, sleeved, and boxed almost 3,700 individual issues. Mark has done some research and has found backer board which chemically stabilizes these poor magazines printed on exquisitely poor paper, and then that backer board with the magazine is slipped inside a clear cover, and then those go into 3-ring binders that we had specially made. Mark has also made labels for the spine so you can tell what's in the darn book. These magazines are the source of the Scan the Past program. So when you go out there, of course, don't touch them, but look and enjoy the incredible collection that is out there. It is substantial. So this is the library as you first walk into it. And that's against the far wall. We've also collected books, club newsletters, and the Scan the Past CDs are here too. Mark, what else is in here? Are you here?
I'm here.
What else is in the library?
Bunch of,
If I can speak. Can you hear me? Okay. The Scan the Past is actually on the opposite side of the
Right.
of where we're at right now, so you can see what has been scanned. I think most of Model Car Science and Car Model, there on the left-hand side is the Scan the Past stuff. On the left-hand side of this photo, up in the upper left-hand corner, is past GSL materials. I'm trying to reorganize it in burgundy binders. The blue binders you saw were club newsletters, and there's a ton of club newsletters, as you can see in some of these photos. So a lot of it still has not been done yet. We get stuff either email or mailed to us, so it takes a while for everything to get in there. We have books. The middle, the small one, small bookcase there on the top is actually model car books or general automotive books. There's a lot of metals. If you see in the right hand, in that same photo on the right hand bookcase, right in the middle there is a picture of a few people that you might recognize when you go down to the museum. Some of them are no longer with us, so you can take a look at that. I've tried.
Photographs we've taken the past DSLs.
Yeah, so there, on the top there, I've tried to collect hats. There's some old things that some people might not know about, VHS tapes, that we're trying to get into DVDs and everything else. So we've got some, we got a nice table there and just a big storage. Some magazines that are stored there that still have yet to be filed. So it was fun. What is that?
Turn on the side.
I guess I didn't do that. I didn't do that.
I was laying on the side. We have a checkup. We have a checkup system for when magazines go out to the scanners, or when I need to borrow one to do some research for a magazine article. We have a check, so we have to sign the magazine out and sign the magazine back in. Because of course we don't want to lose these. One of the other things we're doing is a book the museum is doing on the Revell Pactra and Revell, it should say Revell Tester contest book. We've collected a lot of artifacts, including, as we saw earlier, Augie Ascano's winning, shared top winning car from the second contest. But this is the Pegasus from Richard Mike Johnson. This won the top award in Revell Pachter #1. Mike gave this to us 3 years ago. I picked it up at a gun show in Salt Lake County. A friend of his sent it along. We picked up no background checks. Not bad. No. He also handed us three-ring binders filled with newspaper articles, photographs, and the original drawings that Mike did for this car before he did it. You will notice, those of you with sharp eyes will see that this is not the car, not quite the same version as was in Revell Pachter #1. When after the first contest concluded, Oscar Kowaleski got a hold of Mike and said, would you please resend the car to us? We want to measure it and do the award. This car ended up being the award for all following Revell contests. In the process of doing that, it was badly damaged. They did not pack it well and ended up back at Mike's very substantially damaged. And so he had to redo the bodywork, repaint it. He changed the wheels because he couldn't find the original ones, some of which had been lost. And so this, in a technical sense, is the second version of it and does not precisely match the one in the original magazines. Again, here's Augie's Roadster. Here's the Revell Pachter and Revell Tester bookcase we have, the two display cases rather. We've got a lot of artifacts. The awards, contest entry sheets from the hobby stores, little tags that were given to winners at the local and regional level. You may notice right here, this is Rick Harris's model that won the top paint award in the Revell Pachter #1 contest. He restored it. He had kept this model. He restored it about 10 years ago, and he donated it to the museum. There are some other pieces here that this came from a guy in Florida, and it was winner on a local level only. Down here, you see later awards that came from Augie from the Orange Blossom Hobby Store that he donated to us. We, of course, have several issues of Model Champions. Here are some other models that won in Revell Tester 2. And this model right down here, you see this right here? This Corvette, Alan Rabb found this on eBay and cleaned it up, and it came with a history with Revell Tester #1. And it is an appallingly bad design, but it is really cool. And so he cleaned it up, did not repaint it. And so that model sits right here. Here's one of the trophies using Revell Pachter #1, Revell Tester 1 and 2. And if this were a better picture, you could see that this is this.
Mark, I just got to thinking that when I did that model and most of the models, I would start on one and would build basically almost two models. And up in my rafters in my garage, I believe the box has all of the starting parts of that, if you want.
Of this?
Of that car, of
We want
Newman's
it.
car.
Yeah, we'd love to get that if you want to donate them to
Okay,
us.
yeah, it's where I started.
Wow.
And I'd work further. I had to do it in a month to do 2 months. I had to do that, and had a full-time job running my company too. So
A lot of work.
so I would do it at night and get progressive parts of it, and then I would sit down and photograph to there, and I'd have another one going, and then finally use one to finish the whole thing. And I think it's up in the rafters in the original
Yeah, see
monogram box.
if we can
you
find
want
that, Don.
stuff.
That'd be cool. Here are some trophies from Revell Pachter #1. The tall trophy on the right is the one that Rick Harris received when he won the top paint award. It is about 60 inches tall. And he shipped it out, and he disassembled it, shipped it out in a box, and we cleaned it up, dusted it, treated the wood, and reassembled it. On the back corner, you see see right here, this is Revell Tester Award. By the time Revell Tester 1 and 2 came around, most awards weren't bronze anymore. They were this kind of silver color. But you can see this is clearly Richard Mike Johnson's car. So we have a lot of these kind of trophies there, these contest trophies. Here's a better picture of that Revell Pachter display. We have 2 of Augie's models back here. You may remember from Revell Pachter 1, he did those 2 dirt track racers based on 44s. We have both of them here. Do you want to talk about these, the manufacturer displays? I'm going to turn the time to Phil now. We have manufacturer displays in this back room.
If you were here last time, we had the AMT display, and a little bit of a Revell display. We've done quite a bit of work since then. We've added the monogram display, and in the go back to the monogram for a second. Yeah, there's that is the what is your car? The Predicta. It's Mark. Tell us a little bit about.
I'm obsessed with Starbird's Predicta, and I've collected a lot of artifacts. This is a reproduction display base that somebody did for the hobby store display for the Predicta, and he misspelled 3 words when he did it, but it's the only one we have, so we've got it. This is an original factory-made promo by Monogram that from my collection. I've placed it down there. This 32 Ford right here was placed in a wood case in 1962 by a young man, Pete Bave, who built it, and the shop project was to build the box with a glass cover and put this model in the box. Well, he wanted the box but didn't want the model, so he gave us this model. This is built, the 1962 issue of the yellow version of the Big Deuce. And then, why don't you tell them about the rest of the items you have here?
Okay, we have some of the 8th scale parts packs for these kits in there. Some of them are there's some motors, but there's some wheels, tires, and then there's a couple of kits up on the top shelf that some of the original those are actually complete kits that have been donated to us.
These are not the special program re-releases. These are the original kits.
These are the originals. Go ahead, do the next. Okay, this is the AMT display, and there's quite a bit of paraphernalia in there. Some of the original cars and the brochures of, you'll recognize some of the kits in there and say, I had one of those. Okay, let's go to the...
We have one of these in there, too. You know what this is? AMT had lacquers in the early 60s, and we've collected a lot of this paper ephemera of their lacquer program. And one of these is in here, and this is part of what we'll be scanning later we'll talk about. But that's all we have.
Okay. There is also the Revell display with the quarter scale engine.
This is against this wall right here.
Yeah. Well, it's actually on the other side.
Yeah.
And there's a buck in there of the Attempt 1. Was it Mickey Thompson Attempt 1 car? And it was an original buck that was
That Tom West gave us years ago.
that Tom West gave us.
Steve Rollier. Steve, are you here? Steve Rollier is not here. Tom West called me one day. He was a big executive. Tom West was a big executive with Monogram, and he called me Revell. And he called me one day and he said, I'm moving back east. I've got a pickup truck load of vintage Revell items, including the wood buck of the Attempt 1. And so I called Steve Rollier up, who is very public-spirited, and he took his Ranchero over there and loaded up the back of it, 6 feet tall, strapped it with bungee cords, and hauled it all back there and shipped it up to us in, I think, 9 or 10 large boxes. We have not only the Attempt 1, but we have the Gemini space program kits that Revell did, and we have a set from 1963 through 1968 of the annual internal corporate profit reports from Revell. And so we've got all of these financial reports from that era, which are quite revealing, I might tell you. So we have all of that. Some of the other history items are the GSL display. 4 years ago, on Bob Wick's suggestion, we did an exhibit of the best of show winners that we could acquire at that point and get lent to us. And so we put this together. Bob designed these plaques and so forth, and we did a special booklet, which is a free download on the GSL site on the museum page. And so we've had the honor of having 2/3 of the best of show models through 2009 on display at the museum. You can probably see Randy Durr's Sunoco Camaro here. This is George Layton's van, Dave Baird's Cadillac, my Corvette, Dave Barry's IndyCar, Bob Barnett's clone of the Copper Cart, Rick Summerlot's 39 Chevy Corvette. Let me use this for heaven's sakes. Down here we have Jarris Watson's 36 Ford replica stock sedan station wagon. Oh, I knew I'd not remember this. Fred Grumpke, yes. This was a sort of replica of, I think, Gary Meter's car, if my memory serves me. Exquisitely done. Here's Augie Escano's 32 Ford Victoria with a ton of machine parts. Here's Larry Booth's 57 Thunderbird, which is a replica of a friend's car. And then down here we have other artifacts and models which were not best to show winners from earlier contests. In the back room, we have a collection of built kits. It's not the purpose of the museum to collect built kits, but when people donate them, we keep them. Unbuilt kits, I'm sorry, unbuilt kits. Some of these go back a long time. Others are fairly contemporary. We have, for instance, right here, we have original AMT wire electrically driven promo kits of the 56 Lincoln Mark II. You can see other rare pieces we have across here. And then on this wall, we have all sorts of artifacts of earlier days in the hobby. Against the far wall in the back, we have 3 filing cabinets filled literally with thousands of items. These are items that have come our way, that my sainted wife has inventoried, but not well, because we didn't have the right forms. And so we have them all arranged alphabetically. All 3 of these 3-drawer legal filing cabinets are filled to the top. I can't imagine how many thousands of items that are in here, but things like this are in there from various manufacturers. We have correspondence between people you know in the hobby. We have internal documents from the magazines. We've got a lot of things in there.
Hey, Mark, if you've got a minute, when AMT did the big cord, if anybody sees a built one that looks really old, I knew Phil Hara, and he had his museum and all, and I talked to AMT into building the first one to put in the museum back then. They had a swap meet, and I went up there with it, but to get it done, they were building it, and they were prototype stuff that the week before the show, they still were building it, was in Detroit. And I had to go up there on Thursday, so they wound up on Tuesday, they were still in Detroit working on it. They contacted me Wednesday and said, we've got it done, we bought a ticket on the United Nighter, and you have to pick it up Thursday morning at United. They bought it a ticket, it's gonna come off, and this is the stewardess's name. You pick it up there, and I took it up there, and I had pictures of Hara at his desk watching me put 2 or 3 of the pieces back together. And when they saw the auction it went someplace. So if anybody ever sees one, that would be the original prototype if it could ever be found. It could come here.
That'd be nice if it could.
I'm looking for it. Everything sold out of there. The whole museum went away, so I don't know whatever happened to it, but it would have that's got history.
More pictures from the back room. These on the wall, these are air boxes. These are original kits over here. These are air boxes. These are models that need to be repaired, cleaned up, and then placed on display. Various people have donated them. We have Phil Jensen's mostly complete collection. He's a Tidewater trucker. We have most of his completed models, though they are not in very good shape. They arrived quite broken. You can see some of his work here. These are models in our work area, so to speak. These are more of the unbuilt models we have in the back room. Unbuilt. How many of you recognize this? I know you do. It's called Design a Car. It had this crude slide rule type computer, analog cardboard computer, and you could design various versions of something that looked suspiciously like a badly restyled 58 Thunderbird. I found that at a swap meet 20 years ago. My dad bought me one as a kid, and I thought it was fascinating. So I bought. Here's a picture of this slide reel. You simply slid the thing out, and the little window showed you what parts to use, and they were all atrocious. It was just awful.
But the cool factor.
All the cool factor was there. These are just some other views we have of things we have in the museum, in this back room. Oh, here's Tom West. This is Steve Rollier's Ranchero, where Tom West donated all these items to us. And that's the Attempt 1 wood buck. I might tell you we have 6 or 7 of those, including the Mysterian buck of Roth. Most of these, not from Tom, but most of these were rescued when Revell abandoned his Venice, California plant and threw everything out in a dumpster. Someone found out about it, went over there one night in a pickup truck. I can't tell you the names because they committed a crime. And they went over there one night, and one guy got into the dumpster, and the other guy stood in the bed of the pickup truck, and they tossed all of these wood bucks out and put them in the back of the truck and drove like hell to get away before the cops came. Because in the laws of most every state, of course, when something is thrown away in the dumpster, it becomes the property of the company that retrieves it. So they were stolen. Not this one. Of the trash company that collects them. And so we stole from the trash company. Of course, it would have ended up in the Los Angeles landfill, but yeah. We also collect really rare photographs from the past. We have an article on this fellow. This stuff was done in the early 50s. And they were all done in metal and wood and so forth. And they were covered in Popular Science. And we found some online information. It was featured in the back issue of our museum newsletter. I wish I could remember the fellow's name, but this was yes.
California.
Oh, God bless you.
About driving up here instead of flying. I have the red one, the old curved dash olds. I have the Model T. No, that's the Roadster. He was a disabled World War I veteran, and to make a little money, he was building these. They have steering, everything. The hood's open. It's unbelievable. He was going around selling them to dealers. Let's see, Beverly Hills Cadillac had that Cadillac. It's the third one in, the middle one. The Olds dealer had one in Beverly Hills. That Roadster, the Model T, I think was the one that was in Long Beach Ford's display window. These were in the 50s. Is this on? Yeah, okay. I got to know him really well. I had a 1914 Model T Ford that I had restored. I'd go over and talk to him. He made all of these. Most of the metal was from coffee cans. The wood was from the old, he used the old cigar boxes that were wood boxes. Everything I can take on my Model T. I have a Model T touring car. I have the red 02 Oldsmobile. I have a 1907 Maxwell, and I have a 1893 Steamer. Almost everything works, all of them. The steering works. You push on the brake pedal, and it does that. I can crank the front of the T, and the back wheels will turn. They're amazing. I had thought about they're what, 60-year-old models. I thought about driving up here and bringing maybe 2 or 3 of them. I have a ton of pictures of them. After last time you guys showed me, I think it was this picture, and wondered about it, and I said, geez, that's weird, because I have 4 of them in glass cases that I've owned for a long, long time. They're amazing. Yes, and I went to the Good Guys Scottsdale show about 4 or 5 years ago. In the model contest, that Roadster, Model T Roadster, was there, entered in the contest. It was all broken up. And I asked them who owned it, and they said, well, a guy just came and brought it. And I told them about it, and they said, well, here's his phone number. You want to call him? And he said that he used to work for the Ford dealer in Seattle, and they got this model. It came out of a dealership in Long Beach, California. And he said it, I said, well, how did it get all broken up? He said, well, I wound up being the sales manager there for years. And he said that the owner let his grandkids come in and play with it. And so he said that when I left, they asked me for anything at this place that I would like to take home. And he said, yeah, I want to take that big model because your kids are going to destroy it. I have his phone number, and I've thought about it. That would give me 5 of them, and you could have that one as a bargain find. I need to do something with them. I don't know what, but I was afraid that they're so old, and I was afraid that the trip up and back might not do well, but I wanted to display them. Yeah.
This is a photograph I bought off of eBay. Some guy was selling this 4 or 5 years ago and had a bunch of these vintage model car pictures, and I just bought the lot of them.
Was there any other good pictures in there?
Nothing significant. It was just a bunch of weird, like, no. The answer is no. This is the, yeah. This is the only thing that was really significant. Well, that's it, but we have some other things to talk about tonight. One of the programs we have at the museum is something, Phil, would you go get the Hall of Fame plaque? One of the things we have at the museum is what we call the Hall of Fame. And we have, since 1991, awarded annual, we have, it's up there. It's on top of the box. Don't show it quite yet. We have for about 10 years now divided 2 categories: industry insiders and modelers who have contributed to the advancement of the hobby, so that we recognize people who have made significant contributions for the benefit of what we all love so much. We're happy to tell you that we have the awards. We want to make the award presentation tonight for the 2012. Let's first start. The Hall of Fame Award. Bring it to me. My leg hurts too much. Thank you. The 2012 award for Industry Insider goes to Ed Sexton of Monogram. We'll sign this and send it back to him. The 2011 recognition for Builder goes to Randy Durr. I'll get this signed and get it to you, Randy. The 2012 Industry Insiders goes to Tom Lowe and John Grazula of Round 2. And the, oh my gosh, hold on. I'm getting confused here. The 2012 Hall of Fame Award for Builder goes to Mark D. Jones. We'll get these signed and get them sent out. Their names are reflected on the second of 2 plaques that hangs in the museum that go back to 1991. These awards are selected by a jury of 6 or 7 people from a long list of proposed recipients. So that's, I think it's pretty cool. The next thing we want to talk about tonight, and I'm going to turn to my good friend Paula Naglasopoulos to help with this, is to talk candidly about the financial realities of the museum. I'm going to lay everything out to you. The museum costs $585 a month to keep the doors open. That's the bare rent. Utilities are another $60 to $70 a month. And that's just to keep the physical plant in place. That's to keep the doors open, to keep the rent paid. The place is in extraordinary condition, mainly because we've done a lot of repair work there. But that money has to be raised month in and month out to keep the doors open. It used to be twice that before the economy collapsed, and we had a much nicer, larger area that we simply couldn't afford, and so we collapsed back into the current area almost 2 years ago now. But we need help. We simply, frankly, candidly need financial help to pay the rent, because paying the rent doesn't advance any program that we have. It doesn't help with Clone the Past or Scan the Past or the restoration of models or anything else that has to do with the advancement of the purposes of the museum. It simply pays the rent. Now, I want Paul to tell how he has been supporting the rent as the museum as one way of somewhat painlessly helping us cover the cost. Paul?
So, I used to make sporadic donations to the museum, as a lot of you have. I could sort of tell how they were coming in because I maintain the database of museum members and GSL interested folks and all the folks who come to GSL every year and so forth. And in that database, there's a little list of the donations. So I used to make these sporadic donations to try to help with the museum. And then one day I said, you know, this is quite silly, because the problem with sporadic donations is you just forget to make them. So what I decided to do was simply do a bank transfer every month. So I have a bank transfer every month that comes directly from my account to the museum's account, and that way I don't forget. So that's an easy way to do it. It's painless in the sense that you don't have to bother to write a check. It's still painful in the sense that it's money. But if you think about it, if 30 people did $20 a month, that would pay the rent. So I just recommend to folks that if you want to do some sort of donation, do it monthly, even if it's small. So even if you said to yourself, well, I would only donate $100 a year, then don't donate $10 a month by doing it as a bank transfer. Then you won't forget. It comes in a sort of timely manner every month rather than coming in these sort of odd chunks periodically. And that helps, obviously, keep track of the financial situation of the museum. So that is my recommendation to folks if you want to help to support the museum in the sense of the monthly operating cost, is just make a bank transfer donation every month.
Paul has been faithfully doing this now for about 2 years. About 18 months ago, I thought Paul was smarter than I was, so I did the same thing. But we still have to cover about just shy of $400 a month, and that's got to come from somewhere. Now, we have some very generous people out there, but their donations are sporadic, and frankly, sometimes it falls on me to make up the difference. Now, I understand, and sometimes I make enough money to do that, but there are times when it's frankly very difficult. And again, paying the rent doesn't advance the programs of the museum. It just keeps the landlord from foreclosing on the collection. So if you are inclined to do so, please talk to Paul or I, and Paul can probably tell you best about how to sign up. Yes, sir. The museum and PayPal don't like each other for reasons I'll explain to you one day, but simply talk to your bank. We'll give you the bank routing number, the Federal Reserve routing number, and give you the account number, and they'll just pop it out every month. It took me about 5 minutes to do mine. I might tell you also that the museum is a Utah nonprofit corporation, which means because the museum sponsors GSL, we never pay property taxes on anything, never pay sales taxes or use taxes. We are also, the museum is also what is called a 501c3 organization, which means that it's a public, educational, charitable, nonprofit, tax-deductible enterprise, which means monies that you donate to the museum, you can write off on your tax return if you itemize. Though as a tax attorney, I must tell you, you need to consult with your own personal tax consequences to make sure it's okay. I've got to tell you those things because the IRS requires me to do so. But my point is, we have done this legal work and we've set it up so that you can, in fact, take a deduction. Maybe that helps. It helps me. I know it helps Paul. And we could use the assistance. So please think kindly, not just in terms of what Tim has done so well, in terms of sweat equity and replicating models, but we need help on every level. We need help to scan our magazines. We need help to clone the past. One of the things let me make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself on the program here. Well, I am ahead of myself a little bit. Let's have Gladstone and Phil Gladstone, and is Mike Felix here? Okay. Let's talk about the auction that goes on in here tomorrow night. As those of you who have been here in the past know that we are the recipients of some great generosity every 2 years, and Mike Felix and his crew entertain all of us, and we sell items, the total proceeds of which go to the bottom line of the museum. So it is very helpful. Mike and Phil, take it away.
This, we've had several items donated, and you have a list of most of them. There are some that are coming in tomorrow, and we ask for your generosity. 100% of this goes to the museum, and as Mark has mentioned, it's really a benefit to us. Now, how many here were at the 3D printing seminar? Probably quite a few of you. The company that put the seminar on, along with Lynn Caberna, are donating 2 3D printers for the auction. We will be auctioning those off separately, and we asked for, I mean, there's probably a few of you in here that were just drooling over those machines, and we asked that you'd be generous for the museum.
There was another item you said we were going to auction off besides those 2, right?
I'm sorry. I'm really with it tonight. It must be Friday night or something. I was gonna go. I was just gonna skip out on this and go to a movie like Oblivion or Iron Man 3, but Mark wouldn't let me. So, you got me instead. But we're gonna have a spray booth that is gonna be donated to the auction, and all of this, the 3D printer machines would be shipped to whoever wins those, and along with, I guess, the spray booth. George Layton is the one that has built the spray booths, and he's got one of them he's donating.
It's a very sophisticated downdraft booth with powder coated steel walls. I mean, it's nothing you'd find in Microbark. I mean,
This isn't a $200 booth. This is a nice one.
Trade show 2 years ago, we had one on display.
Yes.
So if all the rest of you slackers and losers want to show up tomorrow for the auction, we'd really appreciate it.
Go to the ATMs tonight.
Yeah, and I found a bunch of small format car magazines from the 50s and 60s, so I brought them 5 or 6 of those, including something I had never heard of, the first issue of Sports Car Graphic from 1959. So I've got a handful of magazines like that. And obviously, many of the articles are written by either Cushenberry or George Barris or Who's Who, pictures of John Masmanian cars, things like that. So I think you'll probably find them interesting. So I believe the auction can be fun. So let's spend money. How was that, Mark? Thank you.
The Tri-State guys, led by Mike, handled the auction, and I've never been to one. I've never been to an auction because I'm usually judging downstairs. What? Well, I've never been to an auction here. Wouldn't know an auction if I saw one. So please be generous. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Finally, I want to talk about one more project that the Tri-State guys have been instrumental in helping us with. Will someone go up there and unpack that box? Would you? Yeah. The Tri-State Club, headed by Tom Geiger and Tim Edenheim and the rest, have encouraged the museum for years to ensure the museum's immortality by inventorying and scanning and photographing everything in the collection and uploading it to a searchable online database. The Tri-State group funded our purchase of this pretty sophisticated document scanner. So every document in the museum will get scanned and loaded onto a database, and then with Mark Benton's documents, and he's been writing code for it and so forth, we're going to be able to convert this all to a brand new website that will, within hopefully the next 2 or 3 years, be available online, so you can go and look and see actually what we have. Those filing cabinets you saw, there are thousands of items in there. We're going to scan them all. We're going to take photographs of every model and inventory those. It's a monumental project, and we're going to ask for help from outsiders, not in Salt Lake here, to take the handwritten notes and keyboard them into the database so they can be eventually uploaded to the site. But this is one bit of evidence. This was an expensive piece of equipment, and they have been very instrumental in supporting this effort to ensure what amounts to the immortality of the museum. Look, it's possible, catastrophically, that in 5 years, a plane crashes into the building and takes out the entire building and destroys the collection. It's possible, not likely, but it's possible. The guy next door doesn't snuff a cigarette and the whole place burns down. Again, not likely. It's block construction, but it can happen. By getting everything scanned, photographed, inventoried, and uploaded to a searchable database, we essentially ensure the immortality of the museum's collection, because anybody on Earth can go and grab it and look at it and learn what is in the collection and what we know is in the collection. So we are going to ask for help please, on this list that's going around, if you can help do some keyboarding, if you can help with the inventory process, please assist us with this. The biggest thing we need is just work, because we can't do it. There aren't enough guys locally. Even if we were all retired and donating 60 hours a week, we wouldn't get it done. There's just too darn much to do. When you have almost 14,000 items in the museum, I mean, what do you do? Now, we're triaging things. Some things are more important, are older and more rare than others. We're not going to scan, initially, in our Scan the Past program, the newest issues of Scale Auto and Model Cars magazine. Obviously not. By similar reasoning, the older things in the filing cabinets, older models that we're going to take each one of them off the shelves and photograph them and then write a narrative history on them. I've got a lot of stuff in here I need to download, so to speak. And it's just going to take, I mean, I can write it, but someone needs to keyboard it. Okay? So please think generously, not only with your money, but with your time. We need the help. I want to be blunt about that. So go to the museum tours tomorrow. As Mike suggests, please come to the auction here tomorrow night and be as possibly generous with your time and your money as you can be, because truly the museum is a reflection of our mutual dedication and commitment to that collection, which memorializes the history of our hobby, not from the point of view, God bless them, of the kit manufacturers or even the publishers, but from the point of view of the guys and women who have built models and who have contributed to the reality of this hobby. It's about the builders from the perspective of the builder, not from other perspectives. And to ensure that we honor and respect the contributions of those who have gone before us and those who are now with us, we need to get this done, and it's just going to take a lot of work. So please, again, sign the list, get it back to me, and indicate your willingness to help. Yes, sir. Sure. We haven't thought of that yet. We haven't thought of that. It's somewhat new to us, too. So it's an interesting idea, but we've not thought about it seriously. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thanks to Tim and to Paul for your great cloning work. Lon, thanks for bringing up your stuff and showing it to us. It's a pleasure to have you here. We have a couple of last-minute items here, some donations through Bill. Come up here if you would, please. Is Ken Leslie here? Yes. Okay, Ken, come on up. You're first.
I don't have anything worthy to be on these shelves at the museum, I don't think. And the only historical significance that there may be about this model, how many entered the Revell-Packard contest in 1963? Fantastic. How many won? 3 of us. I won at the local level in Mishawaka, Indiana, the first Revell-Packard contest. Revell came out with a contest again 3 years ago. How many entered it with photographs? Come on. Nobody. That's the one that Stacy David did? I won it. So 50 years later, I win the next Revell contest. Whoop-de-doo, right? But this was the winner that was chosen in one. There were 6 categories. This won the adult advanced version or whatever. And I'm going to donate this to the museum so they're not having you clone it 40 years from now. So you don't have to worry about this one. And in my hobby shop, I had the forethought, I guess, to ask my hobby salesman to save these for me from the hobby shop. So hopefully they can hang these on the wall at the museum. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm glad to be part of it. Not much of a contribution, but I'm glad to be. Oh, I've got the trophy from this year. I've got the trophy from this and 2 trophies from 1963 for best paint and best intermediate division at my local level. And they're going to the museum as well, hopefully in that Revell box that I saw. Thank you.
My name's Bill Helm. I'm one of the trustees of the museum, even though I tried to get away by moving from Salt Lake 17 years ago. It didn't do any good. I currently live in Missouri, and I'm a member of the KC Slammers Model Car Club that puts on the Heartland Model Car Nationals every summer. And a member of our club used to own a aftermarket business and had a number of packages of flocking left from his business that he asked me to bring along to donate to the museum. His name is Orby Hardister, and so we have this pretty substantial amount of flocking to give to the museum for either use in cloning the past or archiving. So I'll give that to him. I will.
Where's the list?
It's going around. If you want to scan the past or clone the past, sign the list.
And return the list to me. That would be really cool to return the list to me.
These things can slide. Not very well.
Here's your certificate, my friend.
Oh, it is.
It is two-sided. Do you need to scan it?
Oh, no.
How you doing, Mark? How you doing? Good to see you again. Talk to you tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
When you do the 2013, you might want to redo this and remove this furious R from one's name.
501c3 is the magic words, you know.
501c3PO.
Just make another one.
Deep space.
Oh, yeah, deep space
Where'd that list go,
deduction.
Mark? Have you really done artifacts that need to be keyboarded? Yeah. Give me that pen. Give me a real actual pen. Oh, brother.
Randy Durr? Where's Randy?
Randy. Front and center.
Mark, he's not here with the last. I thought he said something about 3D.
I'll give you the card.
Yeah.
There's your certificate.
Why, thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thanks,
Couldn't be
Mark.
better deserved by anybody.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Please take it home. I want to see a photograph of your shop on the wall.
All right, we will get this framed and hung in the appropriate place. That is very
Is
cool.
John Petrucci still there?
John,
Oh, he's over there. I see. I'll go see.
Does he come from the background of 3D printing?
I have no idea who he is. He thinks I have contact information. I don't know if I'm at his office. Oh,
Well, I will print you out a list of all the people I have on the roundtable.
Yeah, this for Scan the
I don't
Past?
have contact information.
Sure do.
Figure out how to
What do you need, just a name and a phone number, or
Name and a
email?
phone number, or name and email.
Right. I'm here locally,
what
by
I
the
want
way.
to do.
Oh, that's good. That's helpful. Yeah, because you can just come and get stuff and bring it back when you, yeah.
Get a scanner first.
Yeah.
I'll be getting a scanner, so when I do, I'll just try to make
Can I interview? Excuse me? Can I interview your book? Sure. Okay, I'll call you. Okay. I can. Yeah. Any recollections of the use? Oh, yeah. Very clear. Thank you.
So, what I think would work, you tell me if it's a better idea, is that, we'll have this advisory team, but I don't want,
Nice pen.
Good, thanks.
I don't want everybody running too much. He's insulating. That's what I'm saying. But I mean, among ourselves, that's, yeah, that's what. Yeah, I'm willing to do that, and I want. But see, I don't even deal with Michael. I deal with Left. 90% of the communication. She's his. Yeah, well, he's got a business to run. I will be with him all day tomorrow. I'll learn a few things. He sees the vision of what we're trying to do. I mean, he was generous, but I don't think he really knows who we are yet. Yeah. That's why I definitely want him to do the museum tour. Talk to those people on the center.